Can I join you?
Oh, no, go right ahead. I don't do like everyone else, but each other.
A surprising number of interviews. Or like a lot of conversations.
Five.
This is.
I'm losing.
No.
I'm fine. Good morning. So, yeah.
One that would be excellent.
I know, that's what I think.
Because if he's not the name take on.
Well, I was just saying.
I know all these other things about him, but I don't care about your name.
Yeah. I like your sweater.
Thank you.
The short sleeve sweater. Wearing stuff.
I saw it because it's something for the season, it seems like.
One is. I know that like a lot of my. Oh. I knew that if I was committee. I would remain involved in
Just throw it on the chicken. Throw my coat.
So you're on my computer for, well, you know, this check. So busy, right? You know. And then we're still. Uh-oh.
Unicorn peanuts.
Oh, yeah, now it's on. Good morning, everyone. All you red flag people and people who forgot to wear red.
You know, right?
We're going to get started on a very exciting meeting. We recently met as council and realized we were ready to start on the capital campaign work, but we wanted to touch base with our congregation overall about the capital campaign kickoff. This isn't a legal requirement. It's not in our bylaws that we have to have this meeting, but it seems very important that we all be on a similar page. There's going to be a lot of probably questions that you still have here, and that's okay. We don't have the answers to absolutely everything. There's a lot to cover here, but this is where we are right now and the information we know at this moment. We're going to cover today things like, background of where we've been, how we got to here, talk through where we are going, including some specifics about the capital campaign timeline. Also touch base on our building planning study and the plans for this building specifically. We're going to have time for questions with the grace to recognize that we don't always have the answers, but your questions are still important. And some of them we probably do have the answers for it. We also hope to vote to approve moving forward with the capital campaign and talk through some next steps. Okay.
All right, we thought we'd start by grounding us in our story. You'll see, a few references to Reformation in this slideshow, including that title slide. It felt really good to be calling for this meeting on Reformation Sunday because we're all grounded in the truth that we as church are continually called to change and to be renewed and to be reformed in order to be faithful to the time that we're living in. And so just a reminder of some past reformations we've already been through as a congregation. Our building used to look like this. Doesn't look like that anymore, right? Fire burned it down in 1995, rebuilt this building with the intention of housing the school in the basement. This is what the shelter used to look like. It has been reformed yet this year to add a second story and now can accommodate 38 single adults. A map there reminding us of the many, many immigrants who come through this building. So we know what it is to be a church of Reformation and to take that seriously for how we steward our properties and programs. And then this is just a really high level overview of where we've been over the last 3+ years, building up to this moment. In 2022, we had assessments done of all the different properties here on this half block. 2023, we did community listening. So we got trained in one-to-ones. We went out into the neighborhood. We talked about what people's hopes and dreams are for Phillips and what they want to see more of. And we surfaced key themes. And then in 2024, in March, we had a joint retreat with our Savior's Community Services. We solidified a working vision together. We then moved forward, took the next step of investment to hire consultants who have expertise to help us in property development and putting in funding applications for the housing part of what we're doing, and also to help us with fundraising and to help us grow in our own organizational capacity as OSCS and the church so that we can take on something like a big campaign. You'll see the Legos. Some of you remember playing with those Duplos a couple of years ago, right? And then this year, we've taken big steps. We signed a purchase agreement with Normandale. So Normandale Housing owns that middle house on Chicago. And we have a purchase agreement with them so that property, we have site control of it as we put in applications for funding the housing part of our vision. We also, as I just referenced, submitted funding proposals to Minnesota Housing, to the city, to the county to help with our vision. Also, we conducted a feasibility study. So some of you were part of that. We had conversations with multiple households of the congregation, OSCS donors, foundations, other folks. You'll hear a little bit more about that later. We also signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with Indigenous Protector Movement. And you can see a picture right here of me and Mike and 3 leaders from IPM as we signed that MOU, which will have us transferring the property here, the corner property with the triplex and vacant lot, to IPM for them to do their good community work and use that as a home base. And so this is just a kind of overview map of our vision for a reformed campus, okay? So we've already done this. OSCS has already done this, expanded and renovated shelter, completed in 2025. Yeah, let's cheer for that. Let's celebrate that. And then we've been using language of parcels, language of pillars to describe the sort of 3 components of our vision. So parcel 1 is this area between the shelter and the church where there currently are 3 houses. Our vision is to tear those 3 houses down and build a 6-story building that would include 40 units of 1-bedroom apartments for folks needing permanent supportive housing. We know that is such a critical need in our community right now. So 4 stories of those 1-bedroom units. On the first story, there would be a new space, beautiful space with windows for the English Learning Center, which served over 800 immigrants last year in education. And then the second story would be an office hub for our Saviors Community Services. They've been officing very piecemeal here and there and everywhere on the campus, and this will bring everybody together to have that unified hub where people can collaborate and build community. So that's that 6-story building, parcel 1. Parcel 2, we're sitting in it right now, the church building. You'll hear a little bit from Doria about sort of what this campaign will fund for our building. And then parcel 3 includes, we really decided as a congregation, we wanted to bring this lens of reparation to how we're stewarding that part of our property. And so where we landed is Indigenous Protector Movement will have this corner with the triplex and a vacant lot next to it to do their community work. And then the other 2 houses right now, our vision is to sell them for a very low price to Habitat for Humanity. And in their partnership with Community Land Trust, City of Lakes Community Land Trust, will create affordable home ownership opportunities for neighbors, which was something we'd heard in the neighborhood that was desired. So it's a big vision. It's a bold vision. I hope this is coming across as review for many of you. And I acknowledge that it's because it's so multifaceted from all the partners that we have, from all the listening that we've done. It's also just a lot to hold in your head. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mike to talk about the 6-story building part. What? I stole his thunder.
This is normally what happens, and I'm okay with that. Martha's a much better speaker than I am, so I'm not a pastor. But if we haven't met yet, my name is Mike Huffman, and I am Executive Director at our Saviors Community Services. I have a lot of familiar faces, but if we haven't, I would love to have you introduce yourself to me afterwards. Certainly. So this is a rendering of the 6-story building. This is not likely, it might be close to this, but you can tell it's not accurate because there's not 2 stories here, and down here, there's not a house next to it. That would be the shelter. So, right. So it's a rendering, it's early images. One thing I wanted to highlight is that we are partnering with VOA National. So they are a developer that has national developments. They have over 1 million units in circulation now. They have a local office and a local individual that we will be working with. So it kind of comes with the best of both worlds is kind of how we saw that relationship. They have national capacity, but they also have an individual here, an office here. They are also going to be our property manager. One of the things that we decided early on is that we don't do property management as well as we would like to, right? In our different buildings now, there's a lot of deferred maintenance. There's things that need to happen to make sure that they are dignified spaces. And in part because limited margins on our part, and because we are a church and we are not property management. And so we just wanted to bring in a partner that could help support that as best as possible.
Thanks, Mike. Oh. And I just want to thank all the many leaders who've been part of this work so far. So we have a joint property committee that has met quite regularly for the last couple of years plus, including me and Mike, Renata Willer, Tal Anderson, David Shea, Quali Neal, Robin Kennedy, Kate Ronald, and Rico Morales. And we've been consulted by Andy Hughes, who works with Mahoney Development Services. And then on the fundraising side, we have this fundraising core committee that's meeting twice a week. And that includes me and Mike, Nick Smith, Mike Troutman, Robin Kennedy, Jim Nglaube, And we had also help from Javen Swanson and David Shea in our feasibility study interviews. And we are consulted by Francis Roan. So can we just like show some gratitude for everyone? Yay. Yes, and the work is far from done. So the next step for us, which Kara will share a little bit about, is we are now pending an approval vote from the congregation, moving forward with a steering committee that will steer this capital campaign forward. And Kara Herrick has been invited and has said yes to serve as the chair of the capital campaign. So I'd like to invite her. Thanks, Martha. So excited for this work, so excited to step into a lot of unknown with all of you. And I have to say, we had a little huddle this morning. It feels like a moment of sort of just powerhouse women at the helm, which is a count me in scenario. So, you know, some of you are very familiar with the sort of architecture of a capital campaign. This just gives you sort of a broad sense of what we're working with. And I think, you know, it's important to know, as Martha mentioned, we've completed the feasibility study. So we'll talk about that in a minute. We are in sort of pre-campaign planning and quiet phase right now, if you orient yourself to the timeline. But I would say what is most important to know is this is a process that invites patience. This is a process that will likely span multiple years. And so sort of leaning into this ethos of boldness, but patience is really important, I think, as we approach this work. So we're very excited. We are at the, you know, at the capable hands of our consultant and many incredible leaders like Mike as well. So we'll continue to communicate with you along each of these sort of phases of the campaign as we continue our path. So Martha touched on this. I was not directly involved with this work, but we had many of you involved with a feasibility study to sort of gauge and drive a feedback loop around our initial thinking in terms of a philanthropic component to our overall campaign target. So individual conversations happened with many of you. Thank you if you were involved. And again, they were meant to be conversations. They were meant to get early feedback on the vision, early feedback, of course, on the number, early feedback on your ability to contribute to the campaign individually. So as you can see what we tested, what did we hear? This is a bold vision. We're excited about certainly some of the improvements to our own space, but also the way in which we're reaching into the community in a way that not many capital campaigns do. So that relationship with OSCS, so powerful. The goal is admittedly ambitious. So I think we heard some reticence about that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We did sort of glide the philanthropic component down slightly. I think there's an acknowledgement that, you know, this is work that will require the broad fabric of our entire community. What exactly that looks like, again, is a bit of the unknown, but I think overall a lot of excitement for the work ahead, which is wonderful. So as I alluded to, the recommendation based on all of those feasibility conversations, based on conversations with our consultant, was to bring our working goal number down to 5.5 million. You can see the breakdown, and we'll share this detail if any of you are interested. Still a bold goal, to be sure, but feels a little bit more in line, certainly with what we heard, and again, based on sort of benchmark recommendations from the consultants. Okay, so looking ahead, I mentioned we are entering the quiet phase, which is a period of time when we will reach out to many of you again. We will reach out to other leaders and foundations in the community to, again, story tell what we're doing, drive excitement, hopefully solicit early gifts. We are in the process, as Martha mentioned, of building a campaign steering committee that will really facilitate and liaise many of those conversations. Ultimately, this work is relationship building. We are building a relationship map. We're going to solicit you today to help with that, but we are building networks. We're understanding where we have connections, and that sort of mapping of that, understanding where we have gaps or white space that we need to move into and get creative about, where we have existing relationships based on all of your networks. That's our work ultimately in the course of this campaign, which is really exciting. And then all of that sort of leads up to the public phase of the campaign, with the hope that we have much of the fundraising already done. And then, you know, again, a much sort of broader reach and more public reach out relative to. Okay, so how can you help? Because we know this is on your mind, and we'll touch on this in a little bit. As mentioned, we are in very early phases of planning. So as we talked about, we are still forming the sort of leadership fabric of this work in the way of the steering committee and making sure that we have members on the steering committee. Rico, thank you already for offering your gifts and being willing to be part of that. Again, early leadership gifts, both from within the congregation and outside. Ways for you to help at this moment. Pray for us, pray for our church, pray for OSCS and all of the folks that we'll touch in the course of the campaign. We hope you'll ask questions. So of course, this is new work for many of us. We are, like I said, at the capable hands of our consulting partner, but we would love your curiosity, would love your feedback, early thoughts about what you might bring to the table. And again, that can be direct conversations with us. We'll touch on this. We are in the process of sort of imagining how we will come back to you with some regularity, whether that's Sentinel updates, whether that's different ways of communicating our progress, since we know that's going to be really important as we, again, traverse this path, known and unknown. So I'll pause there. We will have time for Q&A. If you're left unsatisfied, that's expected. There's a lot of unknown here, but really excited about what the future holds. So I think next we're going to go into a little bit more detail around the building planning study. As a reminder, this should be a review for you. So a lot of these details have been shared in the course of Sentinel updates and adult forums, but we thought it would be useful if Doria would take us through a reminder.
Thank you, Kara, and everybody who's put so much work into this. The building planning study was really a group of us working in parallel with what's been described already, to figure out what it is that we want to do with this parcel here. Like, what are we getting out of this philanthropic work, out of this capital campaign? So a quick thank you. We had some really wonderful people from this community involved. And then we also had Codat Architectural Group. Terry Nagel was the architect who was instrumental in designing this building. So she has deep experience with our property. And then also we had estimating done so that our vision was getting aligned with the numbers that we were talking about just a minute ago. So are these two things going to match up? We considered that this is a 25-year-old building, and 25-year-old buildings get tired. We considered that we're going to have a completely new vision for the basement because it was built to be a school. And we also considered that we have this community commitment to racial, environmental, community justice. And so we want to hold those values really close. Our focus areas were community functionality, spaces for gathering and for the different elements of our community to grow and function. We focused on the HVAC system. It's boring, but it's really important. It keeps us warm, it keeps us cool, and it's really tired. And we also looked a lot at electrical lighting technology because these things have changed a lot in the last 25 years. Finishes and green space, these were things that we thought a lot about, and we put a lot of energy into our vision for those things. And ultimately, those are probably like refined to the lowest level of detail because they're the things that are going to get adjusted as this campaign goes forward. Are we meeting our goals? What kinds of finishes are we doing? So our process was to do core group brainstorming and then to pull in conversations with all of you. This was a big process. Like Karen just said, this should have been pretty visible. So kind of a review here. We did a lot of real-time editing and troubleshooting with the plans for this building. And we did a lot of cost benefit prioritization. So we took that big, grand, exciting vision that we got about from everything, like so many amazing ideas. And then we got really realistic. And there's something satisfying in getting realistic and really prioritizing what you need and what you want. And we considered the pace of this process, when we need things, when we'll be able to do different parts. So a quick overview, you're not going to see very much change at this level. The only change is highlighted over there in yellow. We're going to break out a wall. And there's a storage room there that's going to be more accessible, and that weird little claustrophobic hallway is going to go away. On this upper level, we talked a lot about, so that storage reconfiguration is going to change, but mostly like the hardware on the doors, that they don't slam, and the lighting and the technology, and things like floor tiles. Again, not exciting, but they're the things we have to do to take care of the building. The lower level is going to see a lot more of a facelift. All of these highlighted spaces are going to change through here. So the here in pink, we have some sensory focused spaces, a quiet room, a sensory room, an AV studio. So these are rooms meant to really like create very specific sensory spaces. We have some educational spaces and a new bathroom that has a shower and adult changing spaces. Probably the biggest excitement in the basement is going to be this huge multi-purpose space here. And the vision with that space is that it can be, in some ways, the parallel to this space. That it's a big open room where we can gather, we can eat, we can talk, we can play. And we really did think about the design in terms of it being very modular and very flexible and able to serve everyone in the community. And then we talked a lot about that HVAC, and it's an urgent need, folks. And so we talked about financially, it would be cheapest to immediately just replace it with a conventional system. But thinking about our social commitment and our environmental commitment, we really want to do geothermal. And so what we've done is we've kind of broken that into a green team. And these are some really smart people who know about how to do the technical and funding aspects of that geothermal. And they're working hard to really bring down the price and really increase the feasibility of that geothermal work. There's still probably going to be some cost for that geothermal that gets rolled into our capital. And then our exterior work is focused mostly on grading and making our property contiguous. So with that, I'm going to hand this back to our fearless speaker.
Hello, all. So, you guys have all been so attentive and quiet, but I invite your questions, if you have any right now, for these many leaders and people spread throughout too. Yes.
I have a couple of spaces like this, just like the playroom or like classrooms for center school. I'm not quite sure where those are gonna fit the other day. This is a question.
Oh,
So Margaret asked about youth space and space for Sunday school and godly play. So we're keeping the godly play and nursery where they are, as they are with this plan. And then downstairs, the youth room will again become a youth room, because right now it still says youth outside, but it's a classroom for everything, right? And then we're imagining using some of that multi-purpose space for Sunday school. And we also have a classroom where, yeah, where putting stuff will be, but also we could use that for faith formation too. Another thing, we did some good work on these designs, and with Kara's word about patience and this taking years, like some of this is gonna evolve. And you know, in a few years, once that building is built, God willing, we might have slight tweaks to this vision that we want to make. So, but that's the thinking right now. Yeah.
Godly play will stay where it is right
Yeah, godly play will stay
now. Nursery space.
and nursery space will stay.
yes.
Well, with regard to fundraising, when I think of different people out in the community, I can imagine them, that I know. I can imagine them saying, oh, awesome, all these other things, but your own personal church, not so much.
Yeah, I believe the capital campaign will of course invite restricted gifts that go just for OSCS, for instance, or jointly.
So, yes, this is a question we've talked about a lot. And like, as we decided whether or not to even do a joint campaign, for instance. One thing we are going to be stressing with the broader community is that our church building not only is for the congregation, but it is to be an asset for the whole neighborhood and beyond. And so lifting up, for instance, some of you might not know this, there's an immigrant group, Minnesota Immigrant Movement, that's using our building weekly for classes. So continuing to like carry out the mission of this building as it was built in 2000, that like we want to continue to have partners in here. We will accept restricted gifts, though we really want to stress unrestricted giving. You'll hear us talk about that because we really see this as one big holistic vision. Mike, did you want to add? Kara, just nailed it. Okay.
Well.
Okay. Yeah.
Continuing to educate us
Mhm.
about who's using our space, like I didn't know that.
Right, we'll continue to educate. The other thing is, again, we're gonna be in a quiet phase for a while. That means this isn't splashing up on the front page of the news, like it will when we go public, right? But it's really through our relationships and people who we already know that we're gonna be beginning this work. So we may well get to a point when we're ready for a public phase where like, we have an ask for the synod that's like, we really want you to help us with the 6-story building portion and a donation to IPM, and we take the church building out of it. Like we can play with how we promote it publicly once we get to that place. But for right now, we're really focusing on, folks who are champions already of this vision and starting to build momentum. And we'll keep, this will be somewhat iterative as we go, continuing to refine our messaging and continuing to refine our goal. Yeah.
How far beyond our present facility does the geothermal commitment extend? Because there are a number of other buildings that are to be built, some very big. Is that gonna be part of all of those commitments or just ad hoc?
Dad, that is a great question. The question was, how far does our geothermal commitment extend? Is it just this building or is it beyond? So we are actually now part of this cohort with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, the statewide group that works on climate justice with congregations. And they approached us saying, we really want to work with you to try and make this campus a pilot site for a thermal energy network.
Wow.
Which is super exciting. So we are working on that with MNIPL. We've already applied for one kind of seed grant to help us host sort of a design charrette with all these different stakeholders to work towards that vision of having a 10 network thermal energy network here. And they see with our site, like, great, you have an existing building, you'll have new construction. Like it's a great sized project to try a pilot project like that. So that's our hope. It's being amazing.
Currently as designed, the new building will also have geothermal. Yeah, so that assumes a couple of things. I just want to name that assumes a couple of things. There's tax credits at the federal level that are in currently, depending on how long it takes to build this. We may have to raise dollars to achieve that goal, right? But right now, as designed, it's more cost efficient to put in geothermal in a new building.
Okay, question.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a curiosity question. What was the thought process of giving away the 3 houses versus selling those houses and putting another story on the building instead? And the cost,
Yeah.
what was how did that play out?
Yeah, it really played out from, the question was, how did it play out that we have decided that on the Elliott side, we want to give those away and no longer be owners of that property? And we chose not to sell them like at market value and take that money and put it into the campaign. You're asking kind of why?
Yes, but
What was the thinking?
and I understand why we're giving.
Yeah.
Like, I understand the purpose behind giving away
Mhm.
some space, but why that versus like an extra floor in the building?
Versus like an
Creating-
extra floor,
Correct,
like on the church building or
Right.
something. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so really, we decided to lead out of our reparations commitments and also the realism of, as Mike was saying about OSCS, we're not good property managers.
Okay.
And so we didn't want to hold on to those properties for that reason. And we also just, yeah, as we were stewarding them, just wanted to bring that lens of reparation. How can what we're doing came out of the community listening that we did of people saying, we want some wealth building opportunities. We want like affordable home ownership opportunities. And Habitat and City of Lakes are just such great partners in making that happen. And Indigenous Protector Movement, our relationship just growing over the last couple of years and finding their vision compelling. It really kind of moved at the speed of relationship out of that values commitment to reparation. And that's one of the things, as we share this story in the community, like Mike and I are talking to lots of different people all the time about this vision. And a lot of people really lean into the reparations piece of our vision as like particularly visionary and hopeful and just like a witness of hope in a time where there's so much, an avalanche of cruelty coming at us from the federal government. And so that's priceless, that witness, right? It's priceless, and it may well seed other similar things from other groups once we try it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yep. She's all in the same zone, Brett and then Allison and then
A little bit
Elisa.
about,
Yeah.
I'm curious about the we and the partnership. If the 5.5 million is funding something that's gonna be owned separately, or, who's on the hook for the 5.5 million? Is it half us and half OSCS, and who's owning the buildings? Just thinking of the long term of it, if things get difficult, who's paying it, that kind of stuff.
Yes, so Mike, this isn't, so Brett was asking like, who's on the hook for raising this money, or if it's not successful, well, we'd have to pay some things back, right?
Well, and who's paying?
And
it
who
back?
owns what?
Who's paying it back?
So just like a really quick who owns what?
Yeah.
It's gonna be Volunteers of America and OSCS owning that 6-story building. The church will only own this.
But the money we're borrowing is going into that as well.
Borrowing, we're not.
5.5 million, or the development,
Yeah, so there was a quick breakdown on a slide earlier that shows kind of how we're breaking it down. So 3.6 million will be going towards that pillar 1, that 6-story building. 1.7 million will be for the church building. And then we're raising 200,000 to give to Indigenous Protector Movement on top of the land transfer and the property transfer that they can use towards renovations or towards operations, however they see fit. So that's the current breakdown, and folded into the first 2 numbers is like the administrative costs of running a campaign, like the staff that we have to help us make that. Does that help?
yeah, kind of. I think I'm not quite smart enough financially.
Oh, I mean,
Like the other group.
Question about raising the other money to do the rental building?
No, I'll have to talk to something about how.
I'll try to answer one more question that I imagine is in your head, but I'm not sure. So currently, the church and OSCS have signed MOUs saying that anything that we've paid out so far is going to be split 60% to the church, by the church, and 40% by us. Luckily, thankfully, we have already received early contributions that we didn't, touch on. North of, or don't quote me, north of or right around $500,000. That's what we're using to pay for these early expenses of the council for fundraising, the application to Minnesota Housing. We've added some staffing that Martha mentioned. Those are things that we are paying out of dollars we already have. So we're not borrowing against those. Going forward, The church and us will have a legal agreement defining the financial relationship. And where we will likely move towards a 50-50 split of obligations. That's where we're heading, I think.
And by obligations, like, that really means like if this falls through, right? We're not saying the church is raising 50% of this goal and OSCS and the community is raising 50% of this goal. We're all in, the whole community is all in for the entire thing. Allison had a question.
Yeah, mostly just a memory jog that came up when we talked about second story. Is it accurate that like part of the giving away houses was that we recognized we got them for very, very cheap and or free because loans got forgiven? And
Yes.
when we did initial like architecture stuff for the second story, it was very, very expensive. Are those loans?
Thank you. Allison is remembering some good details that go back to Carrie's question, that we learned that if adding a second story is pretty much cost prohibitive because we'd have to add sprinklers on this level, extra $1 million. It just would have been elevator, lots of challenges there. And also we learned that at the history of these properties that we received them on these forgivable loans, they were basically handed to us to steward. And so offering them forward in the spirit of reparation, it just feels right. Yeah.
And that's a good place, because it's not what I have to say is not so much a question, but just a comment. And as we tell our story about reparations, I also want us to remember that one of our strategic goals was dismantling white supremacy. And, you know, we have come on a journey, and we have a journey to share that the world needs to hear right now, that we as a white congregation don't know better than our community knows about how they need to be healthy and whole. And allowing the community to have ownership over that property is better than assuming that we know better than them right now. We've come a distance. We have matured as in our faith and in our commitments, and we can tell that part of the story that the world needs to hear.
Amen. The world needs to hear and see this witness that is unfolding among us. Yes.
Forgive me if you talked about this before, but the property, that's open in between the building on the corner and the habitat and the for building.
The lot.
Yeah, what exactly is this for?
So the question was, what is this lot between the two buildings and the corner building being used for? That is going to IPM as well, okay? They will be using it for cultural practices and garden and wonderful things like that. Yes, yeah. Yes. Did you have a question?
No,
Oh, okay, yeah, Craig. Yeah. Yeah. Was Craig over here with a question? Oh, there you are.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Anissa was saying too, and just express my thanks and my appreciation for how all of this is built on work that people did earlier, that people did before that, and that's what a congregation is this continuing unfolding of that, going back at least, to the 1980s. When we thought like, we've got to do something for our community. We've got to find new ways to kind of help. And this is just a continuation of it. And I'm just so appreciative of the work that like a new group of people is coming forward. I remember when I was a congregational president, and just like my one stupid comment at one point was just like, do we have a map of like what and who owns what? What are the buildings? And we didn't have one, we had just
I think I've asked that a
acquired
couple
those things. Right? And so just having something like that and a visualization of what we had, how we got it, what it was used for, the good intentions and what we're going forward now is really remarkable. It is really the spirit at work, and I'm so appreciative.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
This is maybe more of Mike and OSCS question. But this is adding a lot of capacity to OSCS's operations, like the 6-story building would add a significant amount of like great community work for your community. Does OSCS have the like ongoing capacity to manage that? What's the plan for that? And maybe for this meeting, like what's the church's role?
Yeah, so the question was, does OSCS have the capacity to support a new building that would significantly increase visibility and capacity by adding housing? And what's the church's role in supporting that new space? So a couple things. So in addition to the other council that we've engaged, we've engaged with a fractional CFO that's helping us with planning for the future, really. So we expect that there will be additional fundraising obligations, but largely, so one of the things that we didn't mention was the building has already received $1 million commitment for the capital from Hennepin County. That came in February. And with that was a $200,000 commitment to services, to support the services in that space. And that's an ongoing commitment from Hennepin County as well, as long as we're compliant with the requirements, right? So this campaign is seeking to increase our service dollars from external sources. So we're not having to do capital campaign or fundraising campaign for every dollar that's needed. We currently have, for folks who don't know, in addition to the 10 units on campus, we have 100 folks in housing throughout Hennepin County. We're not changing the service model that we're doing. We're layering on another level, but it's exactly the work that we've been doing, that we've been successful in doing. We have 95% stability in our housing. So that means people stay for a year or more at a 95% clip. That's something that we should be proud of. And we are. In terms of, what was the second question? The church's role. So I think continuing to be faithful partners in our work. Just because we've moved out of the building, we really intentionally want to be here on campus. We chose to be on campus. We think that it makes sense for the relationship to continue and to be intentional. And we are 43 years old now. And there's an opportunity for the church to invest relationally in new nonprofits, new organizations, while continuing the faithful partnership that you have. And so that's how we see our relationship. Obviously, we're going to need dollars. We need dollars to sustain our programs, particularly in the next 3 years with the administration. There's a lot of uncertainty. But we're doing everything we can to build that foundation now. Part of why a 3-year or 5-year campaign, it allows us to build relationships and build a stable base so that when we are moving into that building, we are ready to launch.
I'll just add, we have this powerful story that we're going to be telling over the next several years, and that's going to invite new partners in to support OSCS too. In the last day, I had a conversation with someone who is not a church person, and I was telling her about our work, and she's like, I want to come on site and have a tour. So she's going to. I talked to a pastor who's not connected to OSCS yet, and he said, we want to get involved in something related to housing. And I was like, well, we got a place for you. So we're always going to be sharing this story, and we all have that role, just inviting people in to be part of this work.
I invite continued questions after we close this, just to any of the people here or the leaders you saw mentioned. But I'm hoping to turn. I invite a motion to approve moving forward with the joint capital campaign. Yeah.
Second.
All right, any discussion? And all in favor? Abstains, anything we need to know on the Zoom? Okay, thank you, yes. Thank you all. Woo! Yay! How joyful. We've touched on a couple of these friends. Again, expect to hear from the campaign committee in the coming weeks and months. We're so excited to continue engaging with you and sort of spread our network wide. We are discerning the right way to come to you with additional updates. Clearly, there's an appetite to stay connected, which is wonderful. So we'll be thoughtful in the way that we make sure that you are fed with the information that feels important. Note that Pledge Sunday is November 23rd. How timely. So of course, it's a time to lean into generosity. Happy to have further conversation with all of you. But it feels serendipitous that that's right around the corner. Tactically, but really fun, we have to name the campaign. So we would love to sort of crowdsource your ideas. We have sticky notes on your tables. We have a sheet on the board over there. We can invite children, I think, as well to contribute name ideas. This can be a fun thing that we do together. And then we've mentioned this, relationship mapping idea. That's really the bedrock of what we're doing. And so to the extent that you have ideas of who we might connect with related to this work, who might be inspired by this work, please let us know. It won't be sustainable over time for me to be the primary conduit of those names, so we'll figure out more creative ways and more structured ways to collect your ideas. But for now, please email me. Of course, you can also email me with broader questions. I also mentioned, given some of the conversation around storytelling, we know we have a compelling, powerful story to tell. There are some materials that are being developed right now by the committee. And so again, we'll also make sure that we get those out. Kyria, Jamie, it looks like stepped out, Anissa, Craig, others. This is a really fun story to tell at this particular moment. So make sure you all feel equipped to do that well. Anything else to add?
I was just gonna lift up that we have Robin Kennedy here in the back. So Robin is formerly Robin Stramp. So if you got emails from Robin, her last name is now Kennedy, but she's the Director of Development and Communications for OSCS and is really like the lead staff person on our campaign. And just like big thanks to OSCS for they're really growing their organizational capacity to support this campaign. Like we're not hiring new staff as a church, but jointly together, we're supporting OSCS in really carrying the staff part of making this campaign happen. And so Robin's role is huge in that. She's someone else to talk to with relationship mapping too. Yeah.
I was just
Sam.
gonna say, I love hearing you repeat frequently and passionately about telling the story. And I don't know if this is the case for other people, but I grew up being told, tell the good news, and I really didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how I was supposed to do that. And even having dynamic worship here, and a lot of my circles, they're kind of allergic, to the things I try to share about worship. People, don't know how to receive it. I'm not sure if I'm sharing it in the right way to make it feel like good news. And this is so exciting to have a way to talk about Jesus' work that we're doing so actively and so counterculturally. And just practicing it every time it gets, you folks have done such a good job telling the story, and it's all of us. It's all of our job now to practice our spiel for Jesus' sake. It's a really exciting.
Amen.
Like 5 to 7 years.
So a lot of it is contingent on when we get that Minnesota housing money. We'll find out in December if we were awarded funding. Now, we've been prepped to know that it often takes multiple years to get funding. We're very hopeful. I'm like ridiculously optimistic that we will get funded in December, but we may well not. And so, had a conversation with Tim Hart Anderson this week, who was the lead pastor at Westminster for 25 years, about our campaign and just kind of hearing his wisdom and advice. And he was like, patience. I heard Kara say earlier, we move forward with boldness and patience. like urgency and patience together, because some things are outside of our control. When are we gonna get that state money? We don't know. So in an ideal world, what, Mike, if we get funded in December?
Yeah, so if we receive funding in December of 2025, we would likely close on the financing portion early next year. And then in fall of 2026. And then we would proceed with construction in late 2026, early 2027. With the intention of moving our first folks into housing in that new building in 2028, January to, kind of winter of 2028. That's assuming everything goes just as we planned. I know, despite Martha's optimism, I know that that's not likely gonna be the case. I will say, we did not receive an early no from Minnesota Housing. So that's a small reason for optimism. And our housing that we're proposing is very in line with what they want. It's all supportive housing. And yeah, housing.
And as a very quick reminder, the affordable housing tax credits and everything were not on the chopping block with the summer bill. They were in fact, yes, expanded. So we're in a good situation for that.
Still there too.
Yeah, geothermal.
Yeah.
Geothermal's still there.
Well, oh, Grant, last comment, and then
Just one note on the geothermal. Last year, the city council secured $10 million, which is not enough. But this year, they've added they're about to add, I think, between 5 and 10 million to that, working towards $100 million a year. But we could be at $20 million a year from the city. And I feel like this project is prime for that kind of support.
amen. Yes, yes. I'm just gonna close with words from our former presiding bishop, Mark Hansen, and we talked to about this project. He was very excited about it and he said, go forward with boldness. So let's go forward with boldness. Thank you all for leaning into this whole work.
I'm very like, yeah.